They say that when a tigress has 4 cubs, one is destined to be a weakling, and as luck would have it, I was reborn as that very rot. I assumed the mother would abandon me to the mercy of other predators, but then, quite unexpectedly, I awakened the gluttony god system. As long as I keep eating, I can grow infinitely, eventually evolving into the immortal Nightfire White Tiger, which is quite a promotion, really. I could even become the tiger god of creation, ruling the universe. But while I was busy dreaming of reaching the peak of tiger life, a sudden roar from the mother tigress echoed in the distance. Hearing this, the 3 cubs lying beside me scrambled toward the sound in excitement. I, however, remained rooted to the spot with a heavy heart. To be honest, Baye's roar sounded weak, lacking its usual strength. It carried a signal of danger and a warning. Reacting instantly, I rushed forward to stop the others and drew a circle on the ground. I warned them not to step outside that line, then set off alone toward the sound. Soon enough, we see Baye's silhouette ahead. She was surrounded by 4 white wolves, her paws pinning down a massive wolf king. The king's breath was shallow and fading. But Bayi herself was badly wounded. The gash on her hind leg was bleeding incessantly, and it seemed she could no longer move it. Even so, the 4 silver wolves hesitated to attack. They knew that a direct confrontation would likely result in everyone losing. But wolves are famously cunning creatures, and they weren't about to do anything so foolish. Sure enough, they suddenly shifted their positions. 2 silver wolves stayed in front to distract Bayi, while the other 2 quietly slipped away into the shadows. One watched from the flank, while the other crept behind her. It was a clear tactical maneuver, designed to wait for the perfect opening. And right on cue, the lead wolf howled. The 2 in front began a series of probing attacks, lunging forward and then darting back. Even a dying camel is bigger than a horse, as they say. Despite her injury, Bayi managed to swat away one of the approaching wolves. But we can see the true plan now. They were using exhaustion tactics to wear her down, allowing the hidden wolf to strike from the dark. As time passed, Baye's movements grew sluggish. Seeing his chance, the silver wolf in the rear lunged for a sneak attack. She had sensed the danger behind her, but as she tried to turn, a piercing, agonizing pain shot through her injured hind leg. She stumbled, frozen for a split second. At this critical moment, I suddenly leaped out and charged straight toward the enemy. He slammed into the silver wolf's flank with everything he had, knowing full well that while their heads are iron, their waists are as soft as tofu. The wolf was sent flying and didn't get back up. Bayi and the remaining 3 wolves froze, utterly stunned by this sudden intervention. When Bayi finally recognized him, her initial relief was instantly replaced by a wave of deep anxiety for her cub's safety. She urged him to run, fearing she wouldn't survive the day, but she couldn't bear the thought of their bloodline ending there. Instead of fleeing, however, he turned and sprinted directly toward the fallen wolf king lying on the ground. He began to feast on the carcass, silently dismissing her worries. After all, he was just an adolescent cub for now. Without a mother's protection, a young tiger has little hope of survival, and he had no intention of being left alone. In this life, Bayi and his 3 sisters were his family, and he simply couldn't stand by and watch them fall. The moment he swallowed the wolf king's flesh, a familiar voice echoed in his mind, signaling a major change. The system detected that his energy was full and the evolution was beginning. Suddenly, a burning heat surged through his entire body. In the next heartbeat, his small frame expanded to 3 times its original size, casting a shadow that changed everything. Terrified by this eerie transformation, the wolf pack retreated in a panic. Even the wolf he had tackled earlier forgot its pain and tried to crawl away. He let out a heaven-shaking roar at the new wolf king, a sound that carried the true authority of the king of beasts. The sheer pressure left the wolf trembling like a leaf. The new leader tucked its tail and fled, though he chose not to give chase. To be honest, the reason was simple. If that alpha wolf fought back in desperation, he might have won, but he would have been injured. Suddenly, the system alerted him to a high-risk enemy nearby. Intrigued, he decided to investigate the source of the threat. Seeing him dazed, Bayi asked softly if there were more enemies nearby. He quickly made up a clumsy excuse about needing a bathroom break. Bayi left with a worried glance, looking back every few steps, while he followed the system's guidance into the brush. After pushing through the thickets, he froze in horror. Near a mountain path sat a dilapidated shack draped with various animal pelts. Among them was the skin of an adult tiger, still steaming as if it had been freshly harvested only moments ago. In front of the shack sat 2 poachers, their shotguns leaning nearby, the barrels gleaming with a cold, metallic light under the moon. One sharpened a blade while the other picked his teeth with a dagger. Hidden in the grass, he held his breath, wondering how many lives these monsters had taken. What truly fueled his rage, however, was the pile of ancient beast traps in the corner, the very things that had mangled Baye's leg. He fought the urge to charge out, telling himself to stay calm. A direct confrontation would be suicide. They had firearms, and he wasn't bulletproof yet. Only after confirming they were alone did he quietly retreat, his mind racing with a single, urgent thought as he moved through the shadows. He had to get his family out of this area immediately. By the time he returned to their den, the sky was already beginning to pale with the coming dawn. Bayi looked at him with questioning eyes, waiting for an explanation. Using his claws, he drew a stick in the dirt to represent a rifle and its lethal range. At first, Bai Yi huffed with indifference, but as the realization of the weapon's power dawned on her, her fur stood on end in pure terror. She remembered that fire stick all too well. Her previous mate had died because of one, and she had watched him fall into a pool of blood. A tiny hole had leaked life faster than she could lick it away, and just like that, a powerful adult tiger had simply ceased to be. She had stayed by his body for a full day until the scent of decay forced her to leave. Since then, she had avoided humans at all costs. And yet, despite her caution, she had still fallen into their trap. He sighed softly, nuzzling her head to reassure her that he would protect them. Bai Yi gave a bitter smile and nudged him back, likely thinking he was far too small to handle such a threat. To be honest, she wasn't entirely wrong. He took it as a personal challenge, determined to become the tiger god. His antics made Bai Yi huff with amusement, and the fear in her eyes faded slightly. He took the opportunity to discuss the plan. She had to be mobile within 7 days so the entire family could relocate to safety. Bai Yi looked at her mangled leg and shook her head, doubting it would heal even in a month. He told her not to worry, he would find a way. He set out to find medicinal herbs that could knit bone and sinew back together, though he knew such things were rare in these woods. As he sniffed and searched through the mountain thickets, the system suddenly chimed in his mind with a very timely notification. A wild ginseng plant had been detected nearby. Following the system's guidance, he pushed aside the brush and found the precious root waiting for him. This was a tonic among tonics. Better yet, the system informed him that consuming it would grant him 500 evolution points instantly. However, we learned that a normal tiger would feel quite unwell after eating it. He froze for a moment, realizing this was actually a stroke of luck. Without a second thought, he bit into the ginseng and swallowed it whole, dirt and all. A second later, a surge of heat exploded within him. The system chimed as his evolution points began to skyrocket, and a new skill suddenly popped up. He was so excited he nearly spun in circles. This skill was perfectly tailored for him. He'd never have to worry about picking poisonous herbs again. He activated it immediately and began to sniff around. The surrounding plants instantly took on different colors. Green meant safe, red meant toxic, and gold meant the plant had special effects for tigers. Only then did he realize that the ginseng he had just devoured appeared as a dazzling gold in his new vision. Quite a find, indeed. The system was becoming increasingly helpful, it seemed. He began a frantic search for more golden plants, and soon found several more. He swallowed several stalks of astragalus and angelica, trading them for evolution points. The system's notifications rang out in a continuous, rhythmic chime. In just one night, he had saved up over 2,000 points. He happily calculated the profit. Hunting for meat took hours for just a few points. Gathering herbs was practically like picking up free money. But as the saying goes, extreme joy often leads to sorrow. As he ran back with a lingji mushroom, his stomach suddenly began to churn violently. A red warning flashed from the system. He had ingested an excessive amount of warming medicinal herbs. Since he couldn't absorb it all, the system suggested spending evolution points to neutralize the medicine or face 3 days of continuous diarrhea. He felt cheated. Why hadn't the system mentioned this earlier? With no other choice, he gritted his teeth and spent 200 points. Only then did the discomfort slowly fade away. It seemed the system wasn't going to give him everything for free. He had to learn some moderation. By the time he returned to the den, the sun was high. Bai Yi was out in the sunlight with the 3 little cubs, enjoying the warmth. Bai Yi was being a bit of a goof, chasing her own tail, while Bai Ming and Bai Fan wrestled nearby. He placed the lingji before Bai Yi. He gestured for her to eat it to heal her wounds. Bai Yi sniffed it and wrinkled her nose, clearly finding the pungent scent a bit suspicious. He urged her to eat, assuring her it wasn't poisonous. Bai Yi skeptically swallowed the mushroom and waited for a reaction that never came. There were no side effects, but her wound didn't seem to be healing any faster either. The system noted that a normal tiger couldn't absorb the potency directly. It would require other treatment measures to work, and that, as it turned out, was going to be another complicated matter entirely. It seemed that herbs alone wouldn't be enough. Bai Yi needed more rest and plenty of food. He was just preparing to go hunting when the system suddenly chimed again. This time, the sound was noticeably different, cold, with a metallic edge. It had detected another system holder nearby. The opponent's level was unknown, and their faction was either hostile or unidentified. His fur immediately stood on end in a wave of pure shock. What on earth was this? Another system? He lowered his body and scanned the area until a red dot suddenly appeared in his skill-enhanced vision. It was closing in fast, roughly 300 meters away. He quickly signaled for Bai Yi to take the cubs and hide deep within a rocky crevice. He then crept forward silently to meet the intruder. After pushing through a dense thicket, he finally saw the figure. It was a Snow White female cub. She was slightly smaller than him, but her aura was staggering, with a faint golden mist swirling around her body. In his vision, she glowed a blood-red color, and her eyes, shimmering with golden light, were fixed coldly upon him. To be honest, it was quite unnerving. There wasn't a hint of innocence in her gaze. Instead, it held the weary indifference of someone who had seen far too much. They stood in a tense standoff. Neither of them made the first move. His mind raced as he wondered where this tigress had come from, and if her system was the same as his. Just then, the system provided a new prompt. It had detected the ancient white tiger bloodline. The stranger had activated the Heaven and Earth Inheritance System, a sibling branch to his own. He was completely stunned by the revelation. The name alone sounded far more prestigious than his own setup. The white tigress let out a low, rumbling growl, her voice carrying an unquestionable authority. Strangely enough, he could understand her perfectly. She called herself Shueji. In her past life, she claimed to be the white tiger empress who ruled these mountains before being betrayed by the nine-headed Hydra emperor. Now she had been reborn with her memories and system intact. He almost laughed out loud, finding the whole story a bit too far-fetched to believe. A reborn empress? He wondered why she didn't just claim to be a god while she was at it. Shueji took a cold step toward him, clearly unamused. She was only there to confirm one thing, whether or not he was in contact with humans. He watched her warily, choosing to remain silent. Shueji roared again, warning him that something that didn't belong had entered these woods. Behind those poachers lay a much more terrifying presence. Cooperate or die, the choice was his. He was almost amused by her arrogance. After all, how much trouble could one little cub really be? Without another word, Shueji suddenly lunged and struck him across the face, sending him tumbling back 3 steps. When he scrambled up, she was still standing in the exact same spot, her posture unchanged. This speed and power were far beyond any normal cub. He rubbed the claw marks on his face, realizing this tigress was indeed the real deal. When he asked how they should cooperate, Shueji signaled for him to lead her to the patient. He hesitated for a brief moment before deciding to bring her back. Upon seeing Shueji, Bai Yi grew tense, and the 3 small cubs huddled together in pure terror. Shueji walked up to Bai Yi and sniffed the wound, concluding it was caused by a trap and that some time had already passed. She glanced up at him, noting that Bai Yi was lucky the bone hadn't been crushed. Then, with a sharp huff, Shueji turned and walked away, signaling for him to follow her to find the best medicinal herbs. He looked back at Bai Yi, who nodded for him to go, and so he followed behind Shueji, cutting through the dense forest until they reached a hidden mountain crevice. The area was covered in various glowing plants. In his system-enhanced vision, the world turned a brilliant gold. He was left speechless, wondering how she had found this place. Without looking back, Shueji simply stated that this was her territory in her past life, so of course she knew. He was about to ask more when the system suddenly issued a piercing alarm, warning of a high-energy reaction detected only 50 meters away from their current position. Following the prompt's direction, he looked toward the center of a pool deep within the crevice, where a glowing mushroom stood. In his vision, its light was as blinding as the sun. Shueji noticed the mushroom as well, her pupils dilating as she clearly recognized its origin. It was a 9-turn jade Ganoderma. She hadn't expected it to still be alive, just as he was about to ask what a 9-turn jade Ganoderma was. The system displayed a prompt that made his blood boil with excitement. Once consumed, it would unlock the transformation function, a prerequisite condition. His heart hammered so hard it felt like it might jump out of his chest. Transformation was the legendary ability for a tiger to become a demon. He had fantasized about this since reading Journey to the West in his past life. He never imagined he would actually encounter it in this life. Seeing him dazed, Shueji nudged him with her paw, signaling him to snap out of it. She warned him that such a treasure must have a guardian. In her past life, she had seen a giant python guarding it. He regained his focus and looked warily at the pool. The water was unervingly calm, which only made it feel more sinister. In his system vision, beneath the surface, we see a massive red dot appearing below, its color so deep it's almost black, clearly a high-level threat. He gives Shueji a look, and she nods in silent agreement. The two of them begin a pincer movement, approaching from the left and right. But as they reach the water's edge, the surface suddenly explodes with a splash as thick as a barrel. A giant python surges from the depths, its body pitch black with scales reflecting a cold, metallic light. The portion emerging from the water alone is over 3 meters long. Its venomous fangs are as long as a man's palm, and its flickering tongue carries a foul, nauseating stench. To be honest, it's a sight that would freeze anyone's blood. The system flashes a warning. Mutated black spirit python, level 12. He can't help but curse inwardly. He's only level 5. After all, this feels like a suicide mission. But Shueji is far bolder than he expected. Without a word, she lunges forward, her powerful paw striking the serpent exactly where its heart should be. The python thrashes in pain, its massive tail sweeping across the ground with a whistling wind. He barely manages to duck in time to avoid the crushing blow. Shueji is hit by the tail, but doesn't budge an inch. She shoots him a sharp glare, silently demanding that he join the fight. And so he grits his teeth. He pounces from the side, aiming his claws directly at the serpent's eyes in a frantic blur of motion. The python roars in agony, opening its bloody maw wide. He nimbly steps back to avoid the counterattack, while Shueji seizes the opening to strike the vital spot once more. This is where things get truly intense. Her claws tear through the scales, exposing raw flesh. The python twists and turns in a desperate frenzy, turning the entire pool into a chaotic mess of mud and water. Our two hunters find their rhythm, working in perfect harmony. She strikes the vitals while he creates distractions, leaving the python with no room to breathe. In less than 5 minutes, the beast is belly up. The system notifications chime repeatedly, announcing that he has successfully slain the mutated black spirit python. He earns 1,000 evolution points and collapses on the ground, gasping for air. Shueji, however, looks as though she's just finished a light stroll. She walks to the carcass, bites open the belly, and pulls out a glowing green orb. The system identifies it as the python gall essence, a rare tonic. Shueji tosses the orb to him, signaling for him to eat it. He pauses in confusion, wondering why she would give up such a valuable prize. She gives him a cold, dismissive look, indicating she has no use for it. With a bit of skepticism, he swallows the orb, feeling a cool sensation slide down his throat. The system confirms a permanent 10% increase to his constitution. It's a wonderful gift, and he takes a moment to enjoy the rush of new vitality. Meanwhile, Shueji has already retrieved the 9-turn jade Ganoderma. She splits the glowing mushroom in two and hands him a half. He looks at her, puzzled. He thought she didn't want anything, but she makes it clear this part is useful to her. This tigress is surprisingly fair, and together, they consume the treasure. As he consumes half of the Ganoderma, a surge of scalding energy explodes within him. The system announces that the transformation function is now unlocking, though it will take 72 hours. He gains an additional 3,000 evolution points. While nearby, Shueji is also enveloped in a golden light. He can even faintly hear her own system notifications chiming away. We see the two of them lying by the edge of the pool, completely still for the entire afternoon as they absorb the medicine. Neither of them moves a single muscle. It isn't until the sun begins to set that he finally opens his eyes, feeling filled with an inexhaustible strength. He tests a single strike, and the power is quite impressive. He shatters a nearby rock with ease. Shueji wakes up as well and observes him, her gaze now carrying a hint of genuine approval for his potential. To her, he's finally more than just a burden. She seems to think his talent is acceptable, not a total waste, at least. He simply rolls his eyes in response. And so, carrying the remaining python meat, they return to the habitat. Bei breathes a sigh of relief when she sees them return safely. The 3 cubs, catching the scent of the fresh meat, immediately swarm around them in excitement. That fool Bei tries to rush to the front again, but he gently pushes him aside, insisting that Bei should eat first. Bei just smiles and shakes her head. She insists the children eat first. With a sigh, he tears off the most tender piece of meat for Bei, while Shueji watches the scene from the side with a cold, silent gaze. The atmosphere becomes a bit subtle for a moment. Bei, being quite generous, invites Shueji to join them, and after a brief hesitation, the tigress finally approaches. Imagine the scene. 5 tigresses and 1 male tiger sharing a meal. It's a bit of a strange sight, to be honest. Once they finish eating, he makes a decision. He decides to gather medicinal herbs through the night, as Bei's injuries can't wait any longer. Shueji offers to go with him, and Bei nods, telling them both to be careful. And so, he and Shueji step back into the darkness of the night. Through his skill-enhanced vision, golden spots of light appear everywhere. He handles the tracking, while Shueji judges the herbs. Her experience from her past life proves to be incredibly useful. There are plants that the system marks as safe, yet she warns him they are toxic and shouldn't be touched. Conversely, she identifies certain herbs as superior healing agents even when the system doesn't react to them at all. He decides to test a few of her recommendations. Sure enough, the system confirms he has gained purification points and even a beneficial status effect for blood circulation. It seems this tigress is a walking encyclopedia of pharmacology. He can't help but ask if she studied medicine in her previous life. Her answer is simple. It's experience gained from eating, which, when you think about it, is a very practical way to learn. Practice makes perfect, after all. Their coordination grows increasingly seamless as they move through the forest, working together with surprising efficiency. He locates the herbs, and she identifies them, and in just 2 short hours, they've gathered a massive pile. All the anti-inflammatory herbs Bei needs are finally collected. Just as they are about to head back, Shueji suddenly stops in her tracks. She pricks up her ears, her entire body tensing as she senses something in the shadows. We hear it too, a series of heavy, rhythmic footsteps echoing from the depths of the dense forest, each stride making the ground beneath them tremble slightly. In the system's skill-enhanced vision, a yellow light appears, marking a creature even larger than the black spirit horse. Shueji speaks in a low, cautious whisper. It's an adult black bear, but something about its condition is clearly wrong. As he looks closer, he realizes the beast is far from normal. Its eyes are a bloodshot red, and saliva drips from its jaws like a creature possessed. The system warns that the bear has been poisoned by a specific toxin. It is currently in a state of extreme, violent frenzy. He suggests they take a detour to avoid the trouble, but Shueji simply shakes her head. She indicates it's already too late. The bear has caught their scent and is charging toward them like a runaway train, snapping small trees in its path. With a resigned sigh, he realizes there is no choice but to fight. Shueji doesn't waste a single second and lunges forward immediately. This time, she doesn't meet it head-on. Using a clever feint, she slips to the bear's flank and delivers a powerful strike right to its midsection. The bear howls in pain and swings a massive paw, but Shueji nimbly leaps back to safety. The bear's strike hits the earth instead, leaving a deep crater. He takes the opportunity to pounce from behind, sinking his teeth into the bear's leg. The beast tries to shake him off, but it can't find its footing. Shueji circles back to the front to keep its attention divided. Caught in their pincer attack, the bear loses its composure entirely, and Shueji seizes the moment. She lands a brutal blow directly to the bear's face, a strike so fierce it claims one of the beast's eyes. Blinded by pain, the bear begins to thrash wildly. Shueji pursues it with a relentless flurry of strikes, knocking the massive creature to the ground in just 3 moves. The bear struggles to rise once more. But Shueji is faster, locking her jaws onto the bear's throat and refusing to let go. In less than a minute, the frenzied beast finally stops breathing. He watches the scene in utter disbelief. This tigress is truly a force of nature. Shueji releases her grip and gives him a cold, sidelong glance. Her look clearly asks what he's waiting for and tells him to start gathering the spoils. He quickly scurries over to process the meat, feeling a bit intimidated. To be honest, she is far more ruthless than he expected. The system announces 800 evolution points for the kill, and he begins dividing the meat. He prepares to bring a share back, but she tells him she doesn't eat this kind of meat. He can't help but wonder what her diet actually consists of. By the time they return, Bei is already asleep with the 3 cubs snoring in her arms. He places the herbs nearby and begins crushing them with a stone. As he applies the paste to her wounds, Bei flinches from the sting but doesn't wake. Shueji watches him work in silence until the task is finally finished. After tending to the wounds, he lies down to rest, and Shueji settles beside him. He notices she has a surprisingly pleasant scent, like a faint aroma of herbs. He tentatively asks if she ever had a mate in the past, but she only gives him a cold, sharp look and offers no answer. Wisely, he shuts his mouth and doesn't dare ask again. But in the middle of the night, Shueji suddenly becomes burning hot, as if she were on fire. Startled, he rushes to her side as the system triggers a notification. It has detected that she is currently undergoing an evolution. The energy fluctuations within her body grow increasingly violent, and a weakened Shueji collapses into his arms, her entire frame trembling. Using the last of her strength, she lets out a low growl, clearly signaling for him to guard her and let nothing get close. She warns that if that thing senses them now, they will both die here. Tense, he pricks up his ears and scans the area with his skill-enhanced vision. For now, we see no red dots on the map, but he wonders what that thing could possibly be to make her so fearful. Time ticks by second. Shueji's temperature continues to climb until he can feel the searing heat beneath her fur. Her breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Her claws unconsciously dig into the ground, so he uses his own body to shield her from the biting chill of the night wind. It is then that it happens. A deafening roar suddenly echoes from the distance. It doesn't belong to a wolf, nor does it sound like a bear. It is a terrifying, deep howl he has never heard before, a sound so heavy and piercing it feels as though it could shatter one's very soul. The system blares a sharp alarm, warning of an unidentified high-energy life form whose level is currently impossible to evaluate. It is roughly 2 kilometers away, and the system repeatedly advises an immediate evacuation. Naturally, his fur stands on end in an instant. If even the system can't gauge its level, he wonders what kind of monster this could be. In his arms, Shueji's trembling only intensifies. Her eyes are squeezed shut at the most critical moment of her evolution. She is completely unable to move. He stares toward the source of the sound. Deep within the pitch-black forest, it feels as though something is watching them from the shadows. A chill crawls up his spine and spreads through his body. He takes a deep breath to suppress his terror. No matter what is coming, he tells himself he will fight to the death if it reaches them. Behind him are the injured Bei and the 3 cubs, and in his arms is the evolving Shueji. This entire family is now depending on him. He knows he cannot back down now. The distant roar echoes once more, and this time, it sounds much closer than before. The system's alarms grow increasingly frantic as he grits his teeth, watching the red in his skill-enhanced vision glow brighter and brighter. That thing is indeed moving toward them, and sensing the crisis, Shueji's evolution suddenly accelerates, her entire body beginning to radiate heat. A brilliant golden light erupts, searing his fur, yet he holds her tight without letting go, knowing he cannot let her be interrupted now. If he fails, all her progress will be lost, and her life would be in grave danger. As the distant roars draw closer, we see him bracing for the worst. The sheer size of the creature approaching from behind is likely beyond imagination, and to be honest, his heart is practically in his throat. Just as the creature is about to reveal itself, Shueji's eyes snap open, and a burst of golden energy explodes from her frame. She leaps from his arms, and as she hits the ground, her body has grown significantly larger, her fur now shimmering with a pale cyan glow. Her eyes now look as if they hold swirling stars as she stares coldly toward the approaching threat and lets out a low, resonant growl. That sound carries a strange authority, and suddenly, the movement in the dense forest comes to a complete, eerie halt as the creature hesitates. After a tense moment, the heavy footsteps begin to retreat into the distance, and the system's alarm finally fades away. He lets out a long, shaky breath. He collapses onto the ground, nearly exhausted, while Shueji glances back at him with a look in her eyes that he can't quite decipher. It was as if she were thinking he was actually somewhat useful before she quietly walked to the side to lie down and rest. Only then does he realize the fur on his front legs has been scorched black, and though he winces in pain, he feels a strange sense of satisfaction. He wonders if that fierce tigress was actually thanking him, though given her icy personality, she would likely never admit it. He begins to lick his burns. He spends some points to heal his skin while reflecting on the night's chaos, from gathering herbs and killing a python to fighting a black bear. This single day has been more intense than a month of his previous life. Nearby, that fool Bay lets out a soft mumble in his sleep. The little guy simply rolls over and continues to snore away, blissfully unaware of the danger they just escaped. He still needs to identify that mysterious monster and stay wary of the two poachers. Just thinking about the workload gives him a headache. But since he is the only male in this family, he tells himself he must carry the burden, no matter how exhausted he becomes. The forest returns to a deceptive calm, but deep down, he knows the real storm hasn't arrived yet, and as he drifts toward sleep, he knows he can't hide forever. As he drifts off, that thunderous roar echoes once more, this time closer and clearer than before. He snaps his eyes open instantly. His ears prick up as the system's alarm blares again, detecting an unknown biological entity rapidly closing in on their position. It is barely a kilometer away and moving with terrifying speed. Shueji is still trembling in the midst of her evolution, while the noise startles Bei awake. Bei looks around warily as the three cubs huddle together in fear. Taking a deep breath, he stands up, deciding that whatever is coming must be faced. He directs Bei to lead the cubs deeper into the rock crevices before he turns to head out alone toward the source of the sound. Shueji lets out a low growl behind him, clearly telling him to be careful, but he simply flicks his tail without looking back and disappears into the brush. After pushing through a thicket, we see the creature, a giant lizard 3 meters long, its entire body covered in dark red scales. Its limbs are as thick as pillars, with a tail longer than his entire body, and thick, viscous saliva constantly drips from its maw. The saliva sizzles as it hits the ground, and the system provides a grim identification, a level 10 mutated monitor lizard. Since he is only level 5, the power gap is staggering. To be honest, this feels a bit like the world is picking on him. The lizard has already spotted him, opening its massive mouth to let out a screech that sounds like metal grinding against metal. Without a word, he turns and bolts. It isn't cowardice, mind you. He simply needs better terrain, as his current frame wouldn't last a second in a head-on fight. The lizard is relentless in its pursuit, and despite its massive size, its speed is frightening. He zigzags, intentionally picking the narrowest paths to crawl through. The beast knocks down several small trees, but its scales are so thick the impact doesn't even leave a scratch. He realizes he must use the environment to his advantage. Seeing a pile of jagged rocks ahead, he accelerates and leaps onto a boulder. The lizard follows, attempting to climb up after him. However, the rocks cannot support the creature's massive weight and collapse with a roar, pinning the lizard beneath the rubble as it struggles to break free. Seeing his chance, he pounces immediately, aiming straight for the lizard's eyes. The beast thrashes in agony, swinging its massive tail in a blind frenzy. He can't dodge in time and takes a direct hit to the flank, sending him flying into a tree with enough force to make his vision swim. The impact nearly knocks the wind out of him, and realizing he's in over his head, he quickly tries to recover and mend his internal injuries. As he scrambles back to his feet, the lizard breaks free from the rocks, its eyes glowing red with rage as it charges. He grits his teeth and pounces once more. He learns quickly and stops trying to match the beast's raw power, focusing instead on its joints and eyes. Yet the lizard's defense is truly absurd. His claws leave only faint white marks on those scales, while a single swipe from the beast nearly costs him his life. After several rounds, he is covered in wounds, and the system informs him that repairing the damage has cost 200 evolution points. It hurts to lose them, but he has no choice. The lizard grows more aggressive, seemingly tireless, as it presses him toward the edge of a cliff with a drop of over 10 meters behind him. As the monitor lizard lunges with its massive maw, he suddenly ducks, sliding beneath its belly while raking his claws across its soft underside. He puts every ounce of strength into the strike, tearing a deep gash into the lizard's abdomen as dark green blood sprays everywhere. The beast's eyes turn bloodshot with pain as it thrashes wildly. Taking advantage of the chaos, he circles behind it and bites down on the base of its tail. That specific spot is where the scales are thinnest, and he latches on with a death grip, tearing at the flesh while the lizard tries in vain to turn and bite him. The beast's tail whips back and forth with terrifying force, tossing him around like a rag doll, yet he refuses to let go as his teeth sink deeper into the muscle. Tasting blood, he realizes the lizard is finally panicking as it begins to bolt forward, desperate to shake its persistent attacker off. The creature drags him through the forest, crashing through brush and rocks that leave his body battered and bloody, while the system's warnings continue. His evolution points drop rapidly from 2,000 to 1,000, then down to 500, but he grits his teeth and holds on tight. He knows that letting go now would mean all his effort was for nothing. Just as his points hit a low of 300, the lizard finally begins to tire. Seizing the moment, he tears a massive chunk of flesh from the tail, leaving the lizard twitching on the ground in absolute agony. He pounces onto its back, delivering a relentless barrage of strikes to the back of its head. 1, 2, 3, each blow striking deep into the bone. The lizard's skull finally cracks under the pressure. After a few final struggles, it goes still, and the system confirms the kill of the mutated Titan monitor lizard. He gains 1,500 evolution points and rises to level 6, collapsing onto the carcass and gasping for air with a body that feels completely broken. It was a brutal, costly victory, having spent 2/3 of his hard-earned points just to survive the encounter, but at the very least, he won. We see a pair of eyes, deeper and more intense than before, as a figure approaches him quickly and leans down to inspect his many injuries. She licks the blood from his face, her eyes flickering with a trace of genuine concern, though she quickly claims it's only because she needs his help. He simply rolls his eyes, knowing better than to argue with her. This fierce female is clearly the type to act tough while hiding a soft heart. After Shueji finishes tending to his wounds, she drags the monitor lizard's carcass over for him to eat, allowing him to regain his strength. The system chimes in to inform him that his evolution points have increased by another 300, bringing his total to 1,200 at level 6. The three cubs gather around to nuzzle him as he enjoys this rare moment of warmth, though his mind is already racing toward their next move. Bei's injuries have mostly healed after several days of rest, and he is finally able to walk again, albeit with a slight struggle. He decides they must relocate immediately, as those poachers could find them at any moment. Fortunately, Shueji has a destination in mind. She leads them toward a safe valley she remembers from her past, a hidden sanctuary surrounded by water with only one secret entrance. It is an ideal hiding spot. Bei agrees to the plan, and he picks up Baiwe while Shueji carries Beiming to begin their journey. With Bei carrying Baifan, the family of 6 sets off under the cover of night, with Shueji leading the way and him guarding the rear. We see them trek through dense forests and wade across streams for nearly 2 hours, moving steadily toward the safety of the valley. Suddenly, as they reach an open clearing, Shueji signals for everyone to stop. She has caught the unmistakable scent of humans nearby. He pricks up his ears and hears voices. The system confirms the threat, detecting 2 humans with firearms only 200 meters away. His heart sinks. The poachers are right on top of them. Bei instinctively moves to protect the little ones, his body tense with fear. He signals for everyone to remain absolutely silent, but in a stroke of terrible luck, little Baiwe suddenly lets out a small sneeze. The sound is faint, but in the dead of night, it carries perfectly. A voice immediately shouts out, followed by the terrifying click of a rifle bolt. He curses their luck internally, but Shueji reacts instantly, sweeping the 3 cubs into the thick brush with her tail before looking at him. With a sharp glance, she signals for them to split up and draw the men away. They bolt from their hiding spots in opposite directions. The plan works, as the poachers are immediately distracted. One chases after him, while the other pursues Shueji into the dark woods. He runs with everything he has, but the footsteps behind him are closing in. Suddenly, a shot rings out, and a bullet whistles past his ear. Pain flares through him as he pushes his speed, darting left and right, but the poacher clings to his trail like a shadow that simply won't be shaken. The flashlight beam leaves him nowhere to hide, and just as the system warns of a dead end, he finds himself trapped at the edge of a steep cliff. Cornered and with nowhere to run, he watches the poacher approach with a raised gun and a sneer, promising to skin him alive once he's caught. But then, the system chimes with a timely notification. A new skill called Environmental Mimicry is available for 100 evolution points. It allows his fur to blend perfectly into his surroundings for 5 minutes, and without a second thought, he chooses to activate it immediately. In the blink of an eye, his fur begins to shift, turning from bright orange to the dull yellow of withered grass, and then to the deep brown of the earth. The poacher walks right up to him, sweeping the flashlight across the ground, yet despite standing inches away, he seems completely blind to his presence. Confused, the man scratches his head and mutters to himself before turning back, and as soon as he is far enough away, Bei quickly deactivates the skill. He bolts in the opposite direction, running for hundreds of meters before finally daring to stop and catch his breath, safe for the moment. The system notes the cost of the mimicry, leaving him with 1,100 points, and he can't help but think how incredibly useful that skill turned out to be. It is, quite frankly, the ultimate survival tool. After taking a long detour, he finally makes it back to the meeting point where Shueji and the cubs are waiting. She looks visibly relieved to see him return unharmed, while little Baiwe nervously licks his face and the other 2 cubs crowd around him for warmth. After a quick head count to ensure the family is whole, he signals that they must leave immediately before the poachers realize what happened. Shueji nods and resumes her lead, and this time we see them moving with extreme caution, sticking only to the most hidden and overgrown paths. An hour later, a mist-covered valley appears through the trees, and Shueji stops to announce that they have finally reached their destination. He surveys the valley, noting the steep rock walls on all sides and the single narrow passage that serves as the only way in or out. At the center lies a small, crystal-clear lake surrounded by a lush variety of herbs and fruit trees, a true paradise hidden away from the world. His system vision lights up with golden markers for all the resources, and he lets out an excited cry while Bay nods in quiet approval. As the three cubs begin to frolic happily in their new home, he prepares to settle in and habitually checks his evolution point status. Suddenly, he notices a new tab has appeared on the system interface. The system mall has been unlocked, though it is only at 1%. The unlock condition involves killing mutated creatures or human exterminators. He freezes in surprise, clicking into the interface to find a shop. Inside the mall, there is only a single gray icon, faintly resembling the shape of a pair of wings, with the unlock conditions displayed below. As he wonders about this, Shueji seems to notice his panel. She takes one look, and her pupils suddenly contract in shock. Her entire body freezes. He watches her with confusion as she stares at the wing icon for a long time before speaking in a stunned tone. She tells him, with a voice full of disbelief, that it took her 3 long years to unlock this mall in her previous life. She wonders why it appeared so early, as the true storm hasn't even arrived yet. Still, life in the valley remains peaceful for a few days. During this time, he hunts frantically to gather evolution points, sparing nothing, not deer, rabbits, or even the fish in the lake. The system notifications chime incessantly as his points rise from 800 to 2,000, though he is still far from the 50,000 goal. He decides to try a different approach, mixing medicinal herbs into the meat he feeds to Bay and the 3 small cubs. Bay eats the healing herbs and finds her wounds mending quickly, while the cubs grow noticeably sturdier and stronger from their specialized diet. That silly Bay can now smash small stones with a single paw, and the cubs' coats have grown shiny. But Shueji's progress is even more absurd. She doesn't rely on eating meat to level up at all. Instead, she lies on the cliffside with eyes closed, surrounded by a faint golden energy. The system notes she is practicing techniques from her past life, gaining 1,000 points a day, an efficiency that puts his system to shame. Refusing to be outdone, he competes with her in secret, frantically swallowing herbs until his stomach bloats, yet he only gains 500 points. Shueji opens one eye and glances at him with a look that clearly says he's just a lucky amateur, leaving him fuming but speechless. Bay watches this play out with an amused look. Her injuries are mostly healed now, and she is beginning to show her true maternal authority. The 3 cubs are kept perfectly in line by her discipline. One day, Bay intentionally leads the little ones out to sunbathe. This leaves him and Shueji alone in the valley. He remains completely oblivious, burying his head in the grass to search for more herbs. Shueji rests nearby with her eyes closed, yet the tip of her tail subconsciously drifts toward him. When he looks up, she quickly pulls it back. She returns to her cold, indifferent expression as if nothing happened, leaving him to wonder why this tigress is acting so strange today. It was strange, but he didn't dwell on it and returned to his herb hunting until he reached the deepest part of the valley. There, we see him discover a hidden hot spring, its steam carrying a faint medicinal scent, with something growing right in the center. It was a glowing Ganoderma, radiating a golden light, so piercing that the system began firing off notifications like crazy. This was the 9-turn Jade Ganoderma. Consuming it would unlock the transformation feature, provided certain conditions were met. He was so excited he nearly leaped into the spring, remembering how the last half herb required 72 hours for a partial change. If he ate another half now, he might transform completely. Without a second thought, he dove in and swam toward the glowing prize. The water was perfectly warm and soothing, but just as he reached out a paw to pluck the herb, the piece was shattered. In an instant, the bottom of the spring seemed to explode, sending plumes of water crashing in every direction. A massive serpent emerged, its scales pitch black with a red glint, sporting fangs as long as his own front legs. He cursed his luck as the system flashed a warning, just as the giant python opened its maw to strike. He lunged to the side, barely dodging the bite, but the creature was incredibly fast in the water, its tail whipping against him. The blow sent him tumbling through the water. He quickly spent purification points to heal, just as Shueji arrived on the scene. Without a word, she leaped into the spring and struck the python's vital spot, leaving the beast writhing in absolute agony. He seized the chance to draw the creature's fire from the front, while Shueji circled behind the tear through its armored scales. She expertly extracted the serpent's gall, and after a few final struggles, the red spirit python moved no more. The system chimed, 1,500 points for the kill, plus a 500-point bonus for defeating a higher-level foe. Having reached level 8, he collapsed by the edge of the spring, gasping for air as Shueji brought the Ganoderma to him. He split the herb in 2 and offered her half, a gesture that left her staring at him in complete and utter shock. She asked if he even realized how precious this was. He did, of course, but eating alone is never quite as satisfying. Besides, if she grew stronger, he would be safer too. Shueji remained silent, a flicker of emotion finally crossing her icy face. For the first time, she smiled, though it was just a slight curve of her lips, and softly called him a fool. She took the Ganoderma and swallowed it. Soon, the 2 of them lay by the spring, absorbing the medicinal power. A surge of scalding energy exploded inside him, and the system announced that the transformation timer had been reset. The next transformation would be in 72 hours, but this time, he gained an extra 2,000 purification points. Shueji was also glowing with golden light, her body growing larger as her fur took on a pale golden shimmer. That night, he entered a state of deep purification, wrapped in a golden cocoon that left him completely immobilized. The system indicated that during this 72-hour countdown, he would be unable to move or fight. Shueji volunteered to stand guard while Bei and the cub hid. The first 2 days passed in relative peace. However, in the early hours of the third day, the sound of heavy footsteps and barking hounds echoed outside the valley. Poachers had arrived with their dogs. Trapped in his golden light, he could only watch as Shueji looked back at him. A flash of grim determination crossed her eyes, and she turned to face the valley entrance alone, without a moment's hesitation. He struggled desperately to break free, cursing her internally for being a stubborn tigress who was walking into a death trap. Suddenly, a red system alert popped up. It had detected that his partner was facing the enemy alone. Her health was dropping rapidly. He wondered, with some confusion, who exactly the system meant by partner. Was it Shueji, that icy tigress? If he didn't help her now, she truly wouldn't make it back. Gritting his teeth, he forcibly interrupted the purification, feeling a wave of agony radiate from deep within his bones. The system warned that interrupting would cost him a third of his points and permanently dilute the transformation's effects. He would only be able to switch between full beast and full human, losing his hybrid form, but he didn't care. Points could be regained, but a life could not. The golden light vanished, and he struggled to his feet, aching all over. His points dropped to 2,000, and his level remained at 8, but the transformation feature was finally active. He rushed out of the valley to find Shueji covered in blood, struggling to hold off 4 poachers, while 2 others already lay motionless on the ground. The poachers were relentless, and Shueji was swaying, barely able to stand, when one of them raised a shotgun and aimed directly at her head. In that moment, something inside him snapped. He activated the transformation feature for the first time, his bones cracking and reshaping as his fur receded. Standing tall amidst a swirl of mist, a muscular young man with long hair lunged forward, throwing a punch with terrifying force. The blow struck the poacher's chest, sending him flying 3 meters back into a tree where he collapsed, instantly unconscious. The remaining 2 poachers stared in absolute shock, likely having never seen a tiger turn into a man before, and to be honest, who could blame them? Even Shueji froze in place, her eyes wide with disbelief as she muttered to herself about how he had successfully transformed in his very first form. She noted that in her past life, such a feat had taken her 2 years. However, he had no time for her chatter and quickly snatched up a fallen shotgun. The military training from his previous life came rushing back as he expertly loaded the weapon and aimed it at the remaining poachers. He stared them down with a cold, predatory gaze, and the 2 men were so terrified they turned and fled, disappearing into the dense forest. After tossing the gun aside, he turned to gather the heavily wounded Shueji into his arms, noting the deep gashes marring her golden fur. In a somewhat clumsy gesture, he lowered his head to lick her wounds, remembering how she had once used her saliva to heal him. He had only managed a couple of licks before Shueji weakly cursed at him, pointing out the obvious. He was currently in human form. She asked if he didn't find it disgusting to lick her like that, and only then did he realize the absurdity of his current state. Imagine the scene, a shirtless man cradling a tigress and licking her wounds. It was, to put it mildly, a bit much for the eyes. Feeling embarrassed, he quickly shifted back into his tiger form to continue tending to her injuries properly until her breathing finally stabilized. The system confirmed that her health had stopped declining, allowing him to finally breathe a sigh of relief as he waited by her side. Once she had recovered slightly, he began to clear the battlefield, finding that 2 poachers were dead while the others had vanished. On one of the bodies, he discovered a map marking various targets in the forest, including dens for wolves, bears, and tigers. One specific location was marked with a red skull and a chilling note. Tiger King's Lair. Bounty, 500,000. These animals really have some nerve. Shueji leaned in to take a look, and we see her pupils suddenly contract as her usually cold expression shifts into something far more intense. She whispered that this specific location was her lair in her previous life, leaving him completely stunned. Her old lair? That would mean this was the territory of the White Tiger Empress herself. It seemed these poachers were being directed by someone behind the scenes, as ordinary people wouldn't dare plot against the Tiger King. And then, there was that mark. He recognized that skull symbol immediately. It was the very last thing he had seen before his death in his previous life. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the poachers were merely pawns. There was someone else behind them, or perhaps something else. Shueji stared at the map in a long, heavy silence, a flicker of fear crossing her eyes, an expression we haven't seen from her before. She hadn't even looked this way when facing the giant lizard or the python. When he asked what the symbol meant, she uttered only 2 words, the enemy. She then turned and walked back toward the mountain, leaving him alone to stare at the skull on the map. The true enemy was finally surfacing, but simply knowing they existed wasn't enough. He knew he had to drag these villains out into the light. He and Shueji decided to take the initiative, following the clues on the map. They tracked the trail through the dense forest and over 2 mountain ridges until they reached an abandoned mine at the forest's edge. The entrance was cluttered with rusted mining equipment, yet a dim yellow light flickered from within. We hear voices echoing from the shadows as he and Shueji quietly creep forward. He and Shueji crept inside, hiding in the shadows of the tunnels to observe. This wasn't just a mine, it was an underground wildlife smuggling den. Iron cages held several rare animals, golden monkeys, pangolins, and even a small leopard cub were trapped there. A poacher in camouflage was busy counting goods while 3 men in suits stood nearby, looking like obvious buyers. Their formal attire looked completely out of place in this dilapidated mine. He perked up his ears, using the system to eavesdrop on them. A balding buyer was haggling with the poacher, mentioning that the Wansho group was extremely interested in white tiger bones. The bounty, it seemed, had already been increased from 500,000 to 800,000. His heart raced at the mention of the Wansho group, just as the system flashed a warning about an overseas threat. This organization specializes in acquiring rare animals, live specimens, furs, and bones. Especially, they are interested in beasts containing special energy, and Shueji, in her past life, was that white tiger empress. Her bones supposedly hold ancient bloodline energy, which is why they've placed such a massive bounty on the Tiger King's lair. As he listened intently, preparing to retreat, a man suddenly emerged from the depths of the mine. He wore a gray Tauist robe. Pinned to his chest was a black badge engraved with a skull, the exact same symbol from the map. Suddenly, the system issued a piercing warning, its alarm echoing in his mind. He was completely stunned. The Tauist seemed to sense something, glancing toward the tunnel where they were hiding with a strange, eerie smile curling on his lips. Without a word, he grabbed Shueji and bolted, but the Tauist began to pursue them with a calm, unhurried pace. With a wave of his hand, the man threw several black talismans that exploded in midair, transforming into dark chains that lunged for them. One chain snared his hind leg, while another went straight for Shueji's neck. He struggled desperately, using an evolution point to break free. Shueji's front leg was caught. She bit through the chain, but those few lost seconds allowed the Taoist to throw 3 more talismans. This time, the chains were denser. Shueji turned, shielding him with her own body. She accepted the price of the chains to let him escape. He looked back to see her bleeding, her eyes telling him to leave her and run. In a heat of passion, he wanted to rush back, but the system warned that the enemy's level was overwhelming. To fight now was certain death. He gritted his teeth and ran as the Taoist's grim laughter and Shueji's cries echoed through the tunnels. He made it back to the valley, wounded and exhausted, collapsing on the ground. Half an hour later, we see that Shueji had also returned. She was covered in blood, her fur torn by deep gashes from the chains, limping painfully. She explained the Taoist hadn't killed her, he wanted her alive. She had escaped while he was distracted. He quickly began licking her wounds, spending evolution points to heal her as the system confirmed her health was slowly recovering. Once her injuries stabilized, he checked the system and noticed the wing icon's unlock progress had jumped from 1% all the way to 30%. The unlock condition was finally revealed. He had to kill a myriad beast system holder. The realization left him stunned. Killing a level 15 Taoist seemed like a suicide mission, but then the system flashed another new notification. It turns out the enemy's system could also level up by absorbing energy from similar systems. In other words, the Taoist was hunting them too. A chill ran down his spine. This was a life or death game where only one could survive. Either he killed to level up, or he became fuel for the enemy. Level 8 against level 15. The gap was simply too wide, and yet, as we soon see, things were about to get much worse as a figure appeared on the peak. The gray Taoist robe stood out sharply under the moonlight. Holding a compass pointed directly at them, the man's lips curled into that same eerie smile as he whispered, "Found you." Every hair on our protagonist's body stood on end. The bastard had tracked them down far faster than expected. He quickly hid Shueji and the 3 cubs in the waterway, ordering them to retreat through the hidden river behind the valley. Shueji hesitated for a moment, her eyes full of worry. The Taoist arrived with 5 poachers, surrounding the valley with shotguns at the ready. He calmly observed the terrain, forming a plan in his mind. The valley entrance was narrow, allowing only 2 men abreast, so he set traps in the crevices. He carefully camouflaged them with branches and leaves. For the first clash, he transformed into human form and charged. Bare-chested, he lunged through the smoke at the poachers. Panicked, they fired several shots, but every single one missed. Shueji ambushed them from the flank, swiping one down while he floored another with a punch. 2 men were instantly finished. The Taoist merely sneered, tossing out several black talismans that exploded into a thick, dark mist upon hitting the ground. The mist rapidly blanketed the entire valley as a system alert flashed. The beast trapping array was now active. Within this zone, the speed and strength of all beasts dropped by 30%. Suddenly, his body felt heavy as stone. His limbs grew weak, making it hard to even stand. Beside him, Shueji trembled as the golden light on her fur began to fade. The Taoist, Yang, walked toward them with a sneer, telling our 2 little cats to be good and accept their fate as sacrifices. He grit his teeth as a wave of defiance surged within him. Behind him lay the path whereby Ye and the cubs had retreated. Beside him stood the wounded Shueji, and he knew he couldn't fall here. Suddenly, the system detected his intense emotional state. A hidden condition, the Star of Protection, was triggered, unlocking a new skill, Azure Swallow Possession. For 500 points, it would ignore all negative statuses for 3 minutes. He activated it instantly, and a second later, his entire body erupted in pale flames. The dark mist vanished as if it had met its natural enemy, and the beast-trapping array was torn wide open by the fire. Feeling an explosion of power, he shattered the Taoist's remaining formations with a single strike. The man recoiled in pure terror. "Impossible," he screamed. "You've barely evolved at all. How can you possess this kind of strength?" There was no time for talk, as the 3-minute countdown had already begun. He lunged at the remaining 3 poachers like a blur. In this empowered state, his speed was simply absurd. 1 strike per man, and in 3 seconds, 5 bodies lay on the ground. Only the Taoist remained. Desperate, he threw every talisman he had, releasing all the energy his system had ever stored. That dark energy coalesced into a massive skeletal phantom 3 times his size. It lunged with a gaping maw, but he didn't flinch. The azure swallow collided with the black tiger, and the resulting explosion leveled half the valley, sending debris flying into the sky. As the dust settled, we see him standing there, drenched in blood, yet the azure flames were still burning bright. The Taoist collapsed, his chest emblem shattered, and his system panel exploding into fragments before his fading eyes. He stepped forward and ended the threat with a final blow. Immediately, the system notifications began to chime frantically. For killing a hostile system holder, he earned 5,000 purification points, plus a 2,000-point bonus for the execution. The system was now fully unlocked, granting him 3 transformation pills, a bloodline purification stone, and a teleportation charm. His level jumped straight to 11. Exhausted, he collapsed to the ground, gasping for air as the battle finally ended. The azure flames slowly died out, leaving him feeling like his bones were broken. It cost 800 points just to begin the repairs. Despite the cost, he still had over 6,000 points left, a massive profit. Shueji walked over to check his wounds, her body trembling slightly. Her eyes were filled with lingering fear. Just as he was proudly preparing to count his spoils, the system suddenly flashed a notification he had never seen before. The main quest had updated. The awakening of the 9-headed Hydra King. An environmental level threat was detected to be stirring. The estimated countdown was 180 days. The reward for completion? The Creation Tiger God Bloodline. The Creation Tiger God Bloodline. Wasn't that the ultimate goal of purification? Shueji leaned in to take a look, and we see her entire body go stiff. Her pupils contracted in terror. In her past life, the 9-headed Hydra King was the one who killed her, though at the time, it should have been sleeping. It had been heavily wounded. How could it be awakening so soon? Seeing the sheer panic in her eyes, his heart sank. This was not a good sign. If even the past life version of Shueji couldn't defeat this thing, and it was waking up in only 6 months, they were in serious trouble. At level 11, he wondered if he'd even be enough to fill a gap in the monster's teeth. In the distance, a blood-red lightning bolt streaked across the sky. A strange, eerie sensation filled the air as if something ancient was stirring. Our time, it seemed, was running out, and 180 days isn't much. Whether that time felt long or short, he spent every day hunting frantically to gather evolution points. The system shop had plenty of treasures, but the prices? Well, the prices were terrifying. That wing icon alone cost 50,000 points, and he only had 6,000. He needed a way to level up faster. But then, Shueji gave him a wonderful surprise. She remembered several spirit veins from her previous life that were hidden throughout the land. The plants and animals near these spirit veins were saturated with energy. He followed her to the first location, a cave hidden deep within a mountainside. The cave walls were covered in glowing moss, and the system immediately chimed. Spirit vein discovered. Evolution point acquisition speed increased by 3 times. He was overjoyed. At triple speed, that 50,000-point goal was no longer just a dream. To be honest, it was the break he desperately needed. Every day, he cultivated and ate within the spirit vein, while Shueji used her own techniques to accelerate her growth. In just 1 month, his level jumped. He rose from level 11 to 15, and Shueji reached level 14. Even Bai Ye and the 3 cubs were seeing their constitutions improve rapidly. That silly fellow Bai Ye was actually the first to awaken a skill, a wind blade from his claws. Bai Ming and Bai Fan weren't far behind either. One awakened frost breath, while the other gained hardened fur. It seems those medicinal herbs he fed them weren't wasted. By the 2nd month, he used the system shop to exchange for 3 transformation pills, each costing 1,000 evolution points. It was a painful expense, but necessary. After Bai Yi swallowed the pill, a golden light enveloped her body, reshaping her bones and shedding her fur as she began to transform. She became a gentle, middle-aged woman with long black hair and a motherly warmth in her eyes. It was her first time walking on 2 legs. Naturally, she stumbled quite a bit, so he helped her adapt. She stared at her hands, murmuring that she finally knew what humans looked like. Next, he gave the transformation pills to Bai Ming and Bai Fan. We see Bai Ming transform into a delicate, elegant young girl. She had dark hair and a quiet, introverted personality. Bai Fan, on the other hand, became a sturdy and athletic young woman. She was well-muscled and possessed a simple, honest nature. Finally, it was time for that silly fellow Bai Yu to take the pill. She transformed into a quirky, mischievous girl with twin braids and eyes that were constantly darting around. Xueji, however, didn't need a pill. She relied on her own cultivation to succeed. That day, golden light erupted from her as her fur vanished, revealing snow-white skin. With silver hair reaching her waist and a cold, noble beauty, she stood in the moonlight like a goddess descending to the earth. He was completely dazed by the sight. She gave him a cold glance, the exact same look she had as a tiger, and he quickly looked away. He was half afraid she might hit him, but the days that followed were even more chaotic. Bai Yu was constantly pestering him with questions. Meanwhile, Bai Ming and Bai Fan practiced their skills in the valley, and Bai Yi stayed busy looking after the 3 transformed children. He and Xueji went to the spirit vein every day to cultivate, and their bond began to grow. One day, he fell asleep from exhaustion. When he woke, he found himself covered by Xueji's fur. She was huddled in the corner, roasting a fish just as she did in her tiger form. He was stunned and asked her why her fur was draped over him instead of her. She claimed she just didn't want him to freeze to death, as she'd have no one to spar with. Amused, he returned the fur to her. As she draped it over her shoulders, her silhouette looked remarkably beautiful in the firelight. On another moonlit night, they sat on the mountain peak. She actually initiated a conversation, mentioning that in her past life, she had lived for 1,000 years in utter loneliness. She hadn't even had a single person to talk to back then. As he looked at her profile, his heart felt a sudden pang of sympathy. His heart softened, and he leaned in to nuzzle her cheek. She froze, her face turning a deep crimson to her ears, her mouth opening to scold him. Yet, the words wouldn't come. Instead, her white tail instinctively intertwined with his. They sat in silence, watching the moon together all night long. No words were spoken, but the silence said more than any conversation could. As the days passed, the 180-day countdown drew closer and closer. He trained like a man possessed, reaching level 18, while Xueji climbed to level 17. Finally, the wings in the system shop were unlocked. He spent 50,000 points to exchange for the frost rock wings. When unfurled, they spanned 5 meters and burned with pale, ghostly flames. He tried to fly, nearly crashing into a tree several times before learning control. 3 months later, the Hydra, Huang, finally awakened. On that day, the sky changed color and dark clouds rolled in. 9 massive serpent heads emerged from the clouds, peering down at the world. Each head possessed eyes of a different color: fiery red, icy blue, lightning purple, wind green, earthy yellow, light white, metallic black, and spatial silver. The system suddenly flashed a warning. The danger level was extreme and could not be fully evaluated. The system suggested an immediate retreat. Instead, he had Bai Yi take the 3 children and hide within the protective formation. The 4 of them were tasked with setting up auxiliary arrays while he and Xueji prepared for a direct confrontation. He spread his wings and soared. Xueji followed closely, her body radiating a holy golden light. Huang's 9 heads attacked simultaneously, raining down fireballs, ice, lightning, and poison. He dodged and weaved, using his frost rock protection to tank several waves. Meanwhile, Xueji lunged at the fire head, tearing through its scales. The head thrashed in pain, spitting wild flames. He took the chance to strike the ice head, using his own heat to melt its frozen armor. However, Huang had 9 heads working in perfect coordination, which was, frankly, a massive headache. A lightning strike sent him crashing to the earth. He left a massive crater in the ground, and Xueji was forced back by a cloud of toxic mist. He stood up, spending points to heal his wounds. Deep down, he knew brute force wasn't the answer. He had to disable the most troublesome heads first. He exchanged for a spatial lock charm. It cost him 2,000 purification points, a painful expense, to be sure, but there was no time to worry about the price. Finding a gap in the Hydra's assault, he slapped the charm onto the spatial head. Instantly, golden chains wrapped around it, sealing its teleportation abilities. Xueji understood the plan immediately. She released her ultimate technique, her entire body transforming into a blinding pillar of golden light. The pressure of her aura weighed down the other heads, visibly slowing Huang's movements. Below, Bai Yi and the 3 children activated the formation. Bai Yu's sharp blade slashed at the lightning head, while Bai Ming's frost froze the toxic head solid. Bai Fan's hardened fur blocked the earth head stones. Bai Ye's array provided a massive buff to the entire field. Our little family was coordinating perfectly, though, to be honest, Huang was still terrifyingly strong. The remaining heads erupted simultaneously. The fire head spat heat like a miniature sun, while the light head fired a blinding beam of pure energy. The dark head released a void that seemed to swallow everything. He was caught by the light beam, leaving his left side scorched and his blood consumed by darkness. He struggled to crawl out, covered in blood with his fur completely charred. Gritting his teeth, he spent his remaining purification points to heal his broken body. His points were nearly gone, plummeting from 6,000 down to a mere 500. Huang hissed in mockery, looking down at the wounded tiger. The serpent mocked him, saying a mere kitten relying on a system dared to defy a lord of creation. He simply smiled, revealing bloodstained fangs. He replied with a single truth. The serpent had forgotten that his system was designed for a gluttonous god, and its purification had no limits. At that exact moment, the system flashed a final notification. The conditions for the ultimate purification had finally been met. It asked if he wished to purify the creation tiger god. However, there was a warning. The process would be incredibly costly. It would consume every resource the system had ever accumulated, and then the system would vanish forever. He didn't hesitate for a second before confirming. In the next heartbeat, his white fur turned to brilliant gold. Golden flames erupted from within him as his size expanded until he blotted out the sun. His wings unfurled to a span of 100 meters, his fur shimmering like sunlight, and an ancient tiger mark appeared upon his forehead. The system chimed one last time to announce the purification was a success. His current rank had ascended to the level of a god. He looked down at Huang, and for the first time, all 9 of the serpent's heads showed genuine terror. He struck with a single, massive golden paw. He shredded the fire, ice, and lightning heads in one go. Huang thrashed in agony as the remaining 6 heads lunged at him in a desperate final stand. Xueji poured all of her remaining strength into him, her body turning into a beam of golden light that merged directly into his own. Their combined powers formed a pillar of light that pierced the heavens. He charged out from the glow, tearing through the serpent's heads one by one. Only the spatial head remained, struggling feebly. Before his death, Huang let out one final, unwilling roar of disbelief at the family that had bested him. As the dust settled, we see him return to his original form, gently holding Xueji, who was equally exhausted and had also shifted back. Looking at the massive corpse of the serpent, he spoke only 2 words, husband and wife. With that, Huang's final spatial head exploded. The serpent dissolved into a rain of blood, vanishing from the world forever. Huang was truly dead, and the system flickered with one last notification. It informed him that his mission was complete. The gluttonous god system had reached its end. It offered a final wish for him and his partner. The system wished them eternal freedom across the myriad worlds. Then, the interface shattered into countless fragments of light. The constant chiming in his mind fell silent forever, leaving him feeling a bit empty inside. To be honest, it was a strange sort of silence. Xueji leaned into his embrace, her strength completely spent. She looked up at him and asked if he had any regrets about the system. Now that the path to infinite evolution was gone, he simply held her tighter. Having her by his side, he felt, was better than any power. A rare, soft smile appeared on Xueji's usually cold face. She suggested that he take human form that night to watch the moon with her. He joked that watching the moon was a bit dull, suggesting instead that he teach her a few things about human romance. Xueji's face flushed red to her very ears, and she promptly punched him 8 meters away. Yes, even exhausted, she was still quite formidable. He crawled back, covered in dirt, and swept her up in his arms to head inside. She struggled for a moment before burying her face in his chest. She whispered something only he could hear, while in the distance, "We hear the foolish Bai Yu let out a loud, teasing whistle." Bai Ming and Bai Fan covered their eyes, pretending not to see a thing. 3 months later, a small, peaceful village had risen in the valley. Bai Yu took on the role of village chief, managing the transformed animals, though he spent most of his time causing minor trouble. Bai Ming preferred the quiet life of reading, while Bai Fan handled the heavy labor. Meanwhile, he and Xueji sat together atop the mountain. The setting sun turned her silver hair into shimmering gold, making her look like a living painting. He turned to look at her, and she met his gaze. They sat in a comfortable silence that said more than words ever could. An evening breeze blew through the forest, carrying Bai Yu's distant cries. The rascal had likely caused more trouble, and he simply shook his head with a smile. Xueji leaned her head against his shoulder as they watched the sky. From a weak cub to a god, the journey had been long and bloody, but with family and a partner by his side, he knew it was all worth it.